So welcome to Cast 11 with a special edition. I'm here with Gary Denny, owner of El Charro. And full disclosure, I am a regular here as I consume Gary's jumbo Cadillac margaritas to his chagrin. How are you, buddy?
Good. How are you this morning?
Good. I'm really kind of stoked to be here in that, like I said, I'm a regular here. I live out here. This is kind of the place. And you have a really cool background historically. And I'm not dating you in terms of historically speaking. We're not far off in age. You actually have more hair than me, so I can't make too much fun of your age. But I just want to talk a little bit about you guys and your history, because you go way back in Prescott. This is the oldest established ongoing restaurant what is it?
In northern Arizona.
In northern Arizona.
Yeah.
When were you guys established?
1959. The Brambilla family, Don and Sophie Brambilla, had the dream. They put together a Mexican restaurant. It was actually on Sheldon Street where the waffle iron is now. And they were there from 59 to 63. And I know this because I was cleaning out the basement of the Charro on Montezuma Street, and I found a bunch of business cards, and they had transposed the phone number, and there was a calendar on the back, a 12-month calendar on the back of the business card, and it was 1963. So, they're amazing, hardworking family. There have been different publications where it's been quoted that my family started Charro. I just want to clear that up because my family did not.
There you go.
We were big fans. We loved the place. My uncle bought the place in the early 80s. They also had a drive-through up on the corner of Sheldon and Arizona Street. They built it. It was a really neat place. I don't think there was much in the way of a drive-through other than liquor stores in Prescott. I think it was one of the first food drive-through places that I can remember.
And that's they started that when?
I would say that was probably mid to late 60s.
Wow. So that goes way back.
Yeah.
We're talking dirt roads, single lane highways.
Oh, goodness.
Cowboys.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And the family, how do you pronounce that last name again, the family?
Brambilla.
Okay. So we got to give them a nod. Is some of that family still in town?
Oh, yeah. Sophie's still alive, as far as I know. Kenny, who ran El Chaparral, when they sold El Charro, I believe it was in 67. That was after the big snowstorm where we got 4 feet of snow. And El Chaparral was in Miller Valley. Actually, it was J.R. Williams' grocery store. And the roof caved in after the big snow.
I'd love to get some of these pictures. Probably really cool.
Yeah. So we were actually in that building buying groceries for the big snowstorm.
Right.
The day before the roof collapsed on the building.
Yeah, those were the days when you actually had to go to the store to get stuff. There was no delivery, right?
No.
And you didn't know if you were going to get snowed in because the roads were probably dirt or not maintained like they are today. We just take everything for granted, right? But back then, you had to take care of yourself.
Oh, yeah. You did because there wasn't any equipment to clear the roads.
Right.
They had to road it was either a dozer or a motor grader to clear the streets. Cal Cordes said he ran that thing all night long.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. And, you talk about snow delays and school closures and a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's a really good, these stories are really good because it reminds us, how far we've come. But back in the day up here, because we're still remote. I mean, Chino Valley, where we're at on North Chino Valley, off of 4 North, I guess.
Oh, yeah, you're
right here. The corner, what's the cross street here again?
4 North and Arizona Trail.
Yeah. It's a destination. I think that's not because, it's also because the food is good and the drinks are fantastic, but it is a destination. You come here because you want to go out to El Charro, you want to sit on the back patio, but it's still a remote place.
Yes.
And it takes 20, 30 minutes to get into Prescott, but I love it out here. That's why my wife and I decided to live out here, is to get away from that. I love it downtown. I used to live in Prescott, but I just love the rural community out here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, me too. When I was a kid, we lived on Rosser Street, a block off of Willow Creek Road. I could ride my bicycle 2 blocks east behind Taylor Rick School.
Right.
And it looked just like it does out that window. There wasn't anything out
Just
there.
cattle fields.
Yes. Yep.
So what are some of your early memories? It's just, I'm always interested in history and lifestyle back then. Like I mentioned, I think you're 4 or 5 years older than me. You're born, well, I don't want to say
60.
You were born in 60. So you're 4 years older than me. I was born in 64. And I remember my neighborhood where I grew up, and I visited there a few years ago, and there's bars on windows. It's just different.
Yeah.
What were some of your favorite childhood memories that you can recall?
Well, fast pitch softball was a big deal in town. My dad was a professional softball player. Yeah, he played all over the country. So, back in the 60s, there were only 3 stations on television. Hardly anybody in Prescott had an air conditioner. We didn't even have an evaporative cooler until the 70s.
Hopefully it wasn't as hot back then as it is now. It cooled down.
It was a little cooler, but people just went outside on their front porches at night in the summertime.
Right.
Or Ken Lindley softball field.
Right.
It was City Ballpark, and then Ken Lindley died. They named it after him. Where
was that?
Police captain.
Where was that ball field? Is that?
That's right across from Filiberto's there on Gurley.
Okay.
Gurley and Arizona Street.
Okay.
And I grew up there. I can remember, you're a kid, you're running around, you're having a great time there, and then you get tired and, you crawl up in your mom's arms, you fall asleep, and it would start to rain, and it would blow the light bulbs out.
What a great story.
Yeah, they would just kind of tinkle down, and, she'd cover you up. But, yeah, I spent my entire childhood there. That and the fact that, it was a very small place. You're right about the dirt roads. And, even in Prescott Heights, there were a lot of vacant lots up there.
Right.
And my grandmother lived a block and a half one direction, my mom's mom and my dad's mother lived out Willow Creek Road, which was, you couldn't walk on Willow Creek Road. It was still a busy thoroughfare.
Okay.
But a Rosser Delano, see my grandmother, you just did that. And I was walking up there before I went to kindergarten.
We all did a lot of walking and playing outside.
Oh, yeah.
Right. We didn't have phones. those were my best memories, was on my Schwinn banana seat. Oh,
you
bet. With the 5-speed stick shift, which I think is worth like $1,200 now.
I know.
I just wish I kept all that stuff. Of course, almost killing ourselves. No seat belts. No sunscreen.
No.
Out all day long, coming back muddy, but you slept like a rock.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all we did was outside all day. I'm curious because you mentioned your father, your grandmother. Were they born and raised up in the region?
Yes. My both sides of the family, my mom's side of the family, 5 generations. My father's generation, 5 generations.
Here in Central Arizona?
Mayor for my mom. Wow. My mom was actually born in Miami, Arizona.
Okay.
Her father was a miner, so they traveled. My dad came from a big ranching family, late 1860s, early 1870s. They settled up in Camp Wood. My great-grandfather owned numerous ranches from Sligman to Skull Valley. They ran cattle. And this was back before barbed wire.
Right. So your family must know some of the original homesteading families.
Oh, yeah.
Of the region, where it was the Fain family and others were after 11 Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys ran both cattle and sheep, from what I understand.
Oh, yeah.
They had a really big operation. Just prior to the Depression, I know most ranches kind of shrunk in size in the late 20s and post-Depression.
Yes.
But that must have been quite a time, right?
It was. In fact, right out the window here, just about a mile and a half north of where we are down the creek, my great-grandfather used to drive cattle down from Camp Wood and put them on the train.
Right.
To feed the Industrial Revolution. So there was an amazing amount of money to be made in this area at the time with the sheep, with the Angora wool,
Right.
with just everything. So there was a lot. Actually, this whole valley was a lot busier 100 years ago than it
was
is right
agriculture,
now.
though, right?
Yes.
We talk a lot about
Yes.
that when you talk about the water issues and all this stuff coming up with the growth. People are so concerned about water, but the reality is we used a lot more back then than we did now for whether it was growing alfalfa for the cattle or whatever
Right.
other crops were being grown. Corn. I don't know what was
Chino
grown up
Valley
there.
was a big corn.
Was it corn?
Yes. Yeah. It
And
was
was
all
that
corn.
predominantly, was that for feed or was that for both human and animal consumption?
Both.
It was both.
Yeah, up until Young's farm, where Mortimer's farm is now, used to have big corn dinners out here,
Okay.
and I think they still do, but they don't get the corn from here.
Right. Yeah, they had the big corn dinner over at was it Del Rio School or whatever once
Right.
a year, which is pretty cool, but
Yeah.
it's not local.
No,
And
not
they're
anymore.
raising money, I think, for the FFA or whatever they do.
I can remember going to watch my Uncle John play football up in Flagstaff, just a little kid, driving through Chino, back when it was a 2-lane road where the cottonwoods actually touched above the road.
So that was a real country road.
Yes, and going through one day, and after they had started to widen the road and pushed all those giant trees over, it was just amazing to see those big trees lying down. But
Oh, man.
yeah, but
But we wish we all kept a boat. They had to make the road wider. Is that
we
why?
make a different road.
Right.
Yeah, no, this place, Dorney and I bought El Charro Norte
hmm
in 1996 from, back then it was called the Fishing Hole.
Okay. They have a pond here or something?
Yes, there was a pond out front, and they dammed up the water for the pond. There's a big irrigation well out there, and that's
Okay.
what they kept the pond full with. And the part where the bar is was built in 1958, so it's actually predates El Charro by a year.
Wow.
And then the cantina was built in 96 or 86, and I built a back room in 99. I used to move buildings, and it was a demolition contractor. So all of the material that we used in the building came
Yeah, I see
from,
some really large, like vigas. Like, do you call them vigas? The logs for
Right.
the
Uh-huh.
roof and some of the support beams.
Yep.
So you got those from like previous jobs, or
Yeah, I got them from Miller Valley. There was a Village Inn pizza parlor where Fry's parking lot is, right off of Miller Valley Road, and that's where the stained glass came from in the front doors. In the back room, there used to be a railroad trestle that went over Lincoln Street, and that's where the big beams came from in the back. The 1x12 in the back room came off the roof of the old YMCA pool house where I learned to swim.
okay.
And
What year was that?
I demoed that building mid-90s.
Mid-90s. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, when they built the new Y.
It was just starting to really. I moved out here in 2004. I still remember it comparatively. It was kind of quiet still, and even during the recession, it got really quiet because I just
Oh,
go
yeah.
by the traffic on the roads, and I remember in like 2009, it got quiet again.
Oh,
'cause
yeah,
you
it
didn't see
did.
the contractor trucks. It just kind of shut down. It was because we're such a microcosm up here, but now with all the retired people, I think even if there was a recession again, it wouldn't slow down like that again, simply because we have more people in the
Right.
dollars from the retired folks and all that.
Yeah, during COVID, when during the shutdown,
Right.
reminded me of old time Prescott.
Right.
There was anybody on the road in the mornings.
It was kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah, it was. Enjoyed it. And I enjoy the drive out here every day.
I get the same thing, and I get to just kind of think about what I'm going to do for the day or what I did yesterday. Or I wind up or wind down for work.
Exactly.
Get to go through all the state land and see the antelope still, some of them,
Right.
and cattle and horses.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why I like working out here. And I spend an hour a day on the road to and fro, so 30 minutes each way, going from here in Chino Valley to Prescott Valley. But I just enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful drive. Getting back to this place, I finished building. We were going to make a steakhouse. Finished the back room in 99. Dorian and I divorced in 99, and that's when I bought El Charro from my aunt and uncle downtown.
Okay.
So it's been in the family now for 40 years.
Okay.
Right at 40 years. Dorian and I started in the bar business in 1983. Upstairs in the Apache Motel, we opened Pudge and Osty's.
Know the name? That's now it's off of 6th Street, and I believe
Yes.
your brother runs
Yep,
that?
my brother
What's
owns
your
it now.
brother's first name?
Craig.
Craig. So Craig Denny runs out, and let's give him a shout out. What's his address there on 6th Street? You're like me and my
It's
brother.
right
Yeah.
on the curb
I know
next
where he
to
works.
Prescott Equipment Rental.
It is. It's a pretty cool place, and it is. If you rent from Prescott Equipment, it's right next door. And anybody that rents from Prescott Equipment already knows about that bar.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great that we build ourselves. My uncle played Major League Baseball, and he was actually in the World Series and won the Cy Young Award the year that
your uncle won the Cy Young Award.
Uh-huh.
What your uncle's name?
John Denny.
John Denny.
1983 Philadelphia Phillies.
That's kind of huge.
Yeah. Oh goodness, it was
I
amazing.
knew you were full of good stories. I didn't know that you had a Cy Young in the family.
Yeah, he'll be out here this October.
Awesome.
But he lives in Orlando now.
Okay.
But so we married in 83. It was the same day that we opened Pudge's.
Mm-hmm.
When our honeymoon came back, and for the Christmas parade, John was the Grand Marshal.
Grand Marshal.
Grand
thank you.
Marshal. Rode in-
I'm not a parade guy, so sorry.
Anyway, yeah, I don't think my feet didn't touch the ground that entire year. It was just being married, opening a bar, having John for an uncle. It was just fantastic.
You're an entrepreneur, because how do you go from, you mentioned it, moving houses, and do you have like an engineering background or just a grit background that says, I'm going to figure this out?
Yes,
Because that takes
that's what
a
it is.
lot. That's not just a normal thing like, yeah, I'll put in a window for you. You're moving an entire structure that's already built. How do you go from doing that to doing what you do now?
Well, you're right, and it's just like that. My great grandfather on the wall over there. He was that kind of guy. Lore has it that he got his first mother cow when he was 8 years old.
Okay.
But by the time he was running the big ranches up north, he had shipped a McCormick's Reaper out here to harvest. Back then, my grandfather said that the grass was knee-high to a man on a horse. So they harvested the grass. They did crop rotation. They would move the cattle from one pasture to another. Just a lot of different things that, you just had to...
That's what you
It
had
just
to do.
evolved. Exactly.
Right.
And that's house moving. What I used to tell everybody about the house moving business is that no one can tell you how to do it. I read periodicals. I talked to a lot of people on the phone. The guy that invented the airbag, the Matt Jack,
Uh-huh.
he said, my rule of thumb is kill a gnat with a sledgehammer. So everything,
What he's saying is have too much to do the job, right?
exactly.
You can't be underpowered when you're moving a structure like that.
Right. If a 104-pound I-beam will work, use the one that weighs 172 pounds at the foot.
Right.
Whatever you needed. Yeah. And that always worked for me. And it was one of those things that you just thought about constantly.
Right.
I'd wake up in the middle of the night with the thought on my mind. It was scary business. It really was.
Did you realize that there was a niche or a need for moving? Because it was still a small town.
Yes.
It was not like, Metro Phoenix and, you got a government contract. We have 100 buildings for you over the next 3 years. This was a small place.
It was. Bernie Fisher was the legendary house mover.
Okay.
The original house mover in Prescott. And he had pretty much retired. And his sons, who had worked for him without any kind of modern equipment. I mean, these guys all had back issues by the time they were in high school. They weren't very interested. And a man by the name of Pat Moore moved from Escondido, California here. And
The first California, he forgot to shut the damn gate. It's the guy from Escondido we got to talk to, right?
Right.
Okay.
So Prescott College used to be where Embry Riddle is.
Okay.
And there were a bunch of dorms there that when Embry-Riddle bought the property, they had to move all the dorms off, and they were pre-manufactured dorms. Bernie and Pat both bid on them, and Pat was a little bitter. He called Bernie and says, "Hey, I want you to move these buildings for me." And he said, "See ya. I'm not going to do
Done.
it." Yeah. So Pat had to become a house mover.
Wow.
And so I bought Pat's business. I worked for Pat for a couple of years, bought his business. So I had Pat for a mentor. I had Bernie for a mentor because I grew up playing Little League Baseball with all of his boys. So I had a lot of good information about good old back-breaking house moving as far as the unified jack machine and all the innovations.
I don't hear about any math and engineering. I just hear hydraulics, backs, crowbars.
Yes.
We're going to get this done.
Right. Digging a trench under a house with army shovels and radio flyer wagons.
Where my mind goes when I hear all this, I hear about your grandfather, great grandfather, ranchers. I know how hard the work is. We have our little hobby ranch, right? We have about 80 animals, and it keeps me moving on the weekends. I'm always fixing something.
Right.
I'm always moving something, installing something that we need. Herd animals break stuff. That's why they push each other over. They push things over. But I love the work. I can't sit and watch TV all day. On Saturday morning, I'm up at 6 a.m. and I'm out doing something. That's why you'll see me here at the bar at 4 p.m. on a Saturday drinking.
Right.
Right. But it's a lifestyle that the sun feels great. The air is great. But there's something about the hard work. And when you hear about the American way, it almost sounds like it's cliche nowadays.
Right.
But I believe from it, and I'm probably wrong, but maybe not, that genetically, biologically, we come from, a lot of us, at least not all of us, a lot of us come from a lineage of people who came over here that didn't know what to expect and they had to hack it out. So you look at our, providence or the history behind who we are, and you look at like guys on the wall, your grandfather, great grandfather, these are dudes and ladies that hacked it out. And I'll mention ladies too, because they were giving birth on the plains right after being on a wagon all day. So do we have that? Was that grit passed on to guys like you that were house movers? Your fathers, your grandfathers were ranchers that hacked it out. And now, and I mention this because I see how you work here and you work your ass off, right?
Right.
You're my age. And I can see sometimes you limp a little bit, and I get it. I got the same bad back. But you keep doing it because it seems like you love it. Is it part grit? And do you think that you inherited some of that from your family?
Oh, I know I did. When your job every day and traveling, the Dennys were in Virginia and Pennsylvania in 1657. They were in Indiana
1657?
1657. Yes.
In Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Well, they were
and Virginia. Yeah.
They were ducking axes.
Yes, they were. And so in 1863, they were in Indiana, and his great-grandfather, Clarence's great-grandfather.
You're pointing at your great-grandfather on the wall, right?
Yes.
So you're talking like 4 or 5 generations back.
Yes.
Right.
William Henry Denny was married to Emily Bragg. She was south of the Mason-Dixon line, same family, Fort Bragg.
Mm-hmm.
Braxton Bragg family, and we were north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Okay.
And they basically had a family meeting in Indiana, and it said, if you don't go west, we're going to kill one another. So they went to North Platte, Nebraska. They built 45 wagons. Henry Denny had been out and back with the Dennys that settled in Seattle in 1860. And so they knew how to
way up there back then, because they were just coming west.
Yeah. Oregon Trail.
Right.
They knew how to provision to get through Indian lands, but travel back then was a way of life. I mean, you had children, you slaughtered animals, you hunted animals every day. You lived and you moved a little further.
And people don't realize that we're so accustomed to, hey, I'm going to go take a 6-hour drive, right? And get there. But if you really critically think about it back then, you could probably only travel a couple hours because you also had to feed yourself and cook and all those things that you do, and then you move along the way.
Right.
But you had so much to do. And what's also, I always think about is, if you look at the writings of these people back then, if you go back to even our founding fathers and the Declaration or any of the writings of those people in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, it really seems like they had a lot of time to think about what they were going to say because it was always said so well.
Right.
And if you really think about it, every move you made back then, you had to think about that move.
Oh, yeah. It was life or death.
Because if you made a mistake or bad judgment, either you're going in the wrong territory, and that might be a bad neighborhood, or you run out of water because you didn't plan out your navigation.
Or you were too
all those
kind.
Things.
Yeah.
Food, water, safety, health. So I think those generations were probably really thoughtful. Because it is reflected in some of their writings that if you read anything from those eras, it just seems really well thought out. Right?
Yeah.
So when you look at your great grandfather, or going back to, do you have any like documents or things from the family?
I do. The excuse me, the Williamson Valley Road was called the toll road. You either had to pay $2 every time you used it, or you had to work on the road. And the gentleman,
$2 was a lot of money.
Yeah,
how long ago was that?
Oh goodness, this was 1870.
That was a lot of money. It was like $20, right?
Yeah, exactly. At least.
Right.
Anyway, the Denny's, William and Clarence. Well, Clarence was a kid, but William and Henry both worked on the road. They, gentleman, a good friend of mine, went up in the courthouse when they moved the assessor's office over to Fair Street, and he found all these documents and all these manifests and supply orders for working on the road, and an inventory of equipment, like one worn shovel, one used pick.
Okay, this brings up a really interesting story. We had a guy come into the Fain Signature Group offices, the Fain family, and I have the great opportunity and privilege to assist those guys in acquiring historical information that they didn't know they had. And a guy came in that had been collecting when Arizona was a territory, not a state, just the territory of Arizona, these documents from the state that showed Marion Fain, who was the original dude of the Fains from the 1860s that originally settled in Cornville, then ended up near Fort Whipple, selling hoe grass and eggs and stuff to the Army.
Right.
Well, he was an overseer, is what they called him. And I think this is the document you're talking about, because in the document it says Marion Fain, overseer, and then they typically had anywhere from 3 to 6 guys working on roads, because he actually had built roads from Phoenix to Flagstaff.
Okay.
And in that document where you triggered my memory was it gave an inventory of the pickaxes, the shovels, which my hands and back just like cried out like those, because the dirt up here.
Oh, God,
dirt?
yeah. It's rock pile.
Right? So those guys got paid by the state, and how they made their money is they took a cut off the top and then paid their other guys to build these roads. And I think that's what you're alluding to.
Yes. Yes, I am.
And I got some really cool pictures of those documents. You probably have some of the same, it sounds like.
And yes, the documentation, there's other, Fort Rock, the ranches that Clarence owned were the Fort Rock, the Cross Shoe, the 7-Up, the ranch in Skull Valley, and then it was called the Denny Number 5, and that was his last big. It was 26 miles north of Sligman. It's still up there.
Okay.
That's great. Keycamper family owns it now.
Okay.
But
I'm familiar with that last name, and she's a roper.
Yeah.
Sarah, I think is her name.
Yeah, well,
great lady.
Their money came from wax paper. They
Interesting.
invented wax paper. So milk cartons and those kinds of things. They got royalties from those for very long.
Interesting. It reminds me of a total rabbit hole down and out in Beverly Hills. You never know where people get their thing from. And the millionaire in Beverly Hills that sold metal hangers, it's like odd things that come along, especially during that time in our history, right? Developing all these new products to live, and wax paper probably was a huge thing for a while because it was before saran wrap, right?
Yeah.
That's a little rabbit hole, but
But so anyway, they were.
The history is just amazing.
Yeah. So, and this brings us to El Charro.
Yeah.
When I bought El Charro downtown, not only did I buy what I knew was a winner, I bought it because, who's going to make cheese and onion enchiladas like El Charro does if I don't buy it and preserve that? And so it's a preservation project, but it's.
Did you take, because you're a house mover and then you get in the bar and restaurant business, did you know did you have a passion for cooking? Did you know that, or did you pick it up along the way?
I picked it up along the way.
Okay.
Picked it up along the way.
So did your first taco suck?
No, because when I bought the restaurant, Rudy Acosta was, he was still there. Phil Flores, who is still with the restaurant, 51 years now, was there.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
so Phil has been with El Charro
51 years.
You must have one of the longest standing employees in all of Central Arizona.
I would have to say. Roberto is back in the kitchen now, 23 years. So when I bought the restaurant, what I brought to the table was my family name, my family history.
Sure.
And thank goodness somebody local bought it because they're not going to ruin it.
Right.
And God, I struggled as an owner for a while. Dorian and I had the bar. I learned the business, the hospitality business, and we had the Apache Motel, which,
everyone knows that who's ever driven into Prescott, right? So you actually owned and operated that?
Yes.
What years were you owner operator?
Right when I got it, my mom bought it.
Okay.
In 80. It was either 80 or 81. It was 80. I got out of college, got my real estate license. My mom had a real estate company, went to work for her. She owned the property she bought the property next door where Prescott Station is. And she needed a sliver of that property to sell to Bob's Big Boy, JB's restaurant. And so she wound up buying the Apache to complete the sale.
JB's was across the street, right?
No, it was that's where Prescott Station is. That was JB's.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the evolution of the Bob's Big Boy chain.
Okay.
And so, the next thing you know, I'm out of school and I'm running a motel. And, there's three things you can do that are hard work. It's owning a dairy, owning a motel, and owning a restaurant. Yes. Those are going to take all of your time. So I haven't had a dairy yet, and I don't think...
You don't do that.
Yeah, no. So anyway...
So back to El Charro, we had to have a rabbit hole and a tangent on the Apache just because it's this...
Yeah, it's an icon.
Overused word, iconic. Yeah. It's a landmark that you pass by going into Prescott.
So I felt a responsibility to keep El Charro open. Okay. It's in my hands now. It's my baby. And I've owned it longer than anyone who's ever owned it. I'm 22 years with El Charro now. And it broke my heart and a lot of people's hearts when I had to close the one downtown. But, honestly, from a financial standpoint, I should have closed it 4 years before.
Right.
A lot of people are understanding that now when they see other longtime restaurants in the downtown area close hands, change hands, change hands, change hands. Right. Being able to bring it out here where, I was heartbroken when Dorian and I divorced. We were married for a very long time. We have a beautiful son, but we also did this together.
Right.
And, I salvaged material for like 13 years and put it in a big pile and drew a set of plans and built this place. So
that's amazing.
When I was able to get that back, a buddy of mine was in real estate, says, "Hey, I got your old place listed." We went out and looked at it that day. We were at Staples. And I came out here and started working on it the next day. Didn't have a contract, I didn't have
Is that
financing
when
secured.
you could actually build something without a permit?
We always had a permit.
It's still standing. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it just, so to be back out here now with my hysterical building, that I brought from Prescott in bits and pieces and built out here, and this property and a huge parking lot.
Huge parking lot.
And a beautiful patio for live music in the summer.
Yep.
And beautiful scenery.
I love coming out here when it's sunsetting, and we sit in the back sometimes just to watch the cows come in. Occasionally you see the coyote following the pack.
Yeah.
A herd of cows.
Right?
It's a beautiful place.
It is. It is. It's just so, and now with all my family photos, we haven't talked about the Ortegas yet, but
is this an Ortega?
nope, that's William Denny. That's Clarence's father.
Okay.
Refugio Ortega is the one next.
Gotcha.
Her family, incredibly, was in the Dominican Republic from Spain in 1505. Spent a lot of time in South America. Cortez came to Mexico and did what he did in Mexico. They were in Argentina, Dominican Republic, and then went to Guanajuato, Mexico, where they became explorers and military men for the crown, for the Spanish crown.
Okay.
Yeah, Juan Francisco Ortega was an explorer that was thought to have been the first European to see San Francisco Bay.
Okay.
So, and founded the missions in San Juan Capistrano and in Monterey. And the English and the Spanish were mortal enemies in Europe, but to come out here halfway around the world or all the way around the world,
right,
and to meet up in Arizona where there are very few people, and then become romantically involved and build an empire, was amazing. And
what's the connection with Ortega's here?
Refugio's daughter Isabella married Clarence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so
you're saying I'm sitting with Spanish royalty?
It was the marriage of what we have out here right now.
Mm-hmm.
Doreen and I opened this as a steakhouse in the 90s, mm-hmm. and then I bring Mexican food out here, and I'm remodeling, and people are stopping by. What are you going to do here? Well, it's a Mexican. Oh gosh, we have 7 Mexican food restaurants in Chino. We don't need another one.
Right.
Okay, what we want is a steakhouse, and we want the fish fried like they used to have at Windmill Farms.
Right.
So we do both of those now, but that's what was served, not the fish fry, but that was what was served on the ranches.
You had a lot of steak. You had
a lot of steak, and you had a lot of Mexican food because a lot of the women that worked in the kitchens at the ranches were Hispanic, and a lot of the cowboys were Hispanic.
Right.
The caballeros. El Charro means top hand cowboy.
Right.
So yeah, it just all came together. It just all came back around. I hope they're up there watching because I get a lot of grief that, I'm a gringo that owns a really good Mexican restaurant. So I have to get back in it. That's one of the reasons that's my favorite picture up there.
Right.
Well,
I've always wondered, about the history of each one of these pictures. In our offices, again, at the Fane Group, there's some amazing, I don't see how somebody had the foresight to carry around one of these giant cameras. There's this picture of Marion Fane on Mingus Mountain with a mule deer on the back of the horse. And yet somebody had to take that picture. Right. I'm like, you guys were carrying around 80-pound cameras. This wasn't, again, you have to think about the context. Cameras were boxes on tripods.
Oh, yeah.
Big, right?
Right.
So it's just that people had foresight, hey, I want a picture for, later on in 2022, people could talk about me on Mingus back in the 1800s. It kind of cracks me up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the same thing with, there's a picture on the wall over there with William up at Fort Rock. Mm-hmm. William was more of a trapper. And
the place is just probably full of, because it still is, but I mean, full of wildlife.
Oh my goodness.
More elk, more deer, more antelope. it's just, I imagine bear and probably more cougar. It was just
Yeah, with
crazy.
the amount of water that was there
Yeah.
back then, much wetter place.
Right.
Kurt Wells, who owns the neighboring ranch here, told me a story about his grandfather telling him that they used to water 5,000 mother cows just right behind the restaurant, right out there by the bridge.
5,000?
5,000 mother cows. So that's what I'm saying. This place was just crawling with animal life and
Right.
industry.
And a lot of steak.
A lot of steak. And, I talked to a guy. I was in the Waffle Iron where El Charro was started, I don't know, last year. And a Hispanic guy came in. Was from Tucson. His family owns a 25,000 acre ranch down in that area. He said, Mexican food, Sonoran Mexican food is ranch food. It's
Right.
what was served on the ranches.
Right.
So that's why I say this is just, and God, I used to get such a hard time because the old signs downtown said authentic Mexican food. Well, it's authentic to us. If you go to Caborca, Prescott's sister city, sit down and order enchiladas, they're going to taste just like mine. They're going to look just like mine.
Mm-hmm.
That's Sonoran food. If you go to Oaxaca, where they specialize in mole, that's going to be something completely different in that area. If you're on the coastal regions, the food is going to be completely different, just like it is here.
Right.
But, for us, it is authentic to us. People say, well, you buy these store-bought taco shells. I just laugh. I say, when I was a little kid, you had to go to a Mexican restaurant to buy hard taco shells because that's the whole term taco bender. That's where that came from because that's what we use in the back. We take fresh tortillas and we put them in the bender and we put a dozen of them in the fryer at a time, 2 dozen actually, pull them out, and that's it. So, yeah, everything that we're a scratch kitchen.
So this is great history. I mean, I dig it because people think you're just another restaurateur, but really we're talking about history that goes back to the 1500s.
Yes.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Way before the Civil War. And you're talking about exploration in Mexico and how eventually paths cross. And now your family's here, right? I mean, I'm summarizing, obviously, but all along the way, the history of the food, the history of the culture comes through the generations, and El Charro is the sum of all that, right?
Right.
It all
right.
kind of ends up here.
And the pioneer work ethic.
Right.
You're right. You're right about that.
I've got to believe that there's some studies on that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's something you're taught. I do believe that you're watching your folks and your grand folks working hard. That's important to see for somebody young. But, there's just some people that don't have it in them. They can't work that 12-hour day, right?
No.
I wasn't taught to work the way I work. I never saw my dad sitting on the couch. I never saw my dad sick one day. There's just something, I don't know if it's nervous energy and the grit to work through the problems, whether they're the mental, intellectual issues that we have to work through, or just, I have to dig this trench under this house
right.
to frickin' move it. Right?
And that was always sad because, I would put a couple of guys on the job and I'd come back and they're sitting outside on the curb saying, hey man, this can't be done. This is impossible. Right? I said, go home and come back tomorrow at about noon and I'll have it going for you. Yeah, you got to get down. You got to do it yourself.
Yep.
You got to do it yourself.
I think that's something that's not taught. I think you're born with it. I think you can teach some of it, but I think you're born with it. So I'm wondering, what is that grit gene? There's got to be some smart PhD, neuroscientist. So yeah, it's right here in the brain. That's, if you look at these guys that put rockets on the moon or satellites in orbit, working through those problems and ignoring people that are saying you can't do it, or it's not going to work out here in Chino Valley. Nobody's ever going to want to go to a restaurant way out here. You can't move all these logs and build your own place. but you do it, and then they come.
Right.
Right. And that's a big part of the satisfaction, at least it would be for me. I'm thinking, trying to get in your brain is it's got to be hard because at the end it's so rewarding. And there's something strangely addictive about that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to have another hard day, but at the end of it, it always feels good.
Yeah. I say thank you and have a good night. Everybody on the way out the door, and they turn to me and they say, food was great again.
Right.
Thank you. Service was great. Thank you so much. 99% of the time.
Well, that leads to another rabbit hole. But, today we're challenged with, labor, and it's hard not to want to look at those comments online and all that nonsense. I'll just say it's bullshit. These echo chambers, and it's a very small group of people. We'll come in here and we see what's going on. We're regulars here. And I go, oh, it looks like, he's down a couple guys or a couple gals today. And we go through the same thing with my staff. And what we do is it's just a different world right now. And people have to understand. I had a talk with my wife and say, hey, look, when we go out, it doesn't matter where we go. We're not expecting anything. We're going to go get a glass of wine or a drink at the bar. And if it takes a little longer, okay. It's just a little bit different world sometimes, more regularly, if you will, just with the way the market is. We always have a great experience here, but what are you experiencing in the market with employees and labor? Are you challenged?
Oh yeah. It's an economic issue as much as it is a social issue.
Yeah.
Young kids can't afford a $400,000 house, and they can't afford to make the payment on that house working at a restaurant or 3 restaurants.
Right.
So the available labor source is, in this area is primarily Prescott has always been a retirement area.
Yep.
But it's gotten so heavy with that you're just not seeing the young people moving to the area. Now and I'm kind of proving myself wrong. I just had 3 hires, kids in their 20s, and some of them live at home. Some of them just moved here. And I hope they can afford to stick around because they're really good help.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Ironically, I just attended Arizona Department of Housing work group, if you will, yesterday, the town of Prescott Valley.
Oh, yeah.
And the data, says about 19% of people, the workforce is in the rural areas, and they're struggling. The average income is like, if you're making $23,000, you can only afford about a $600 a month rent, which includes utilities.
Right. So that's
there's
not
nothing in existence like that, right?
No.
And so what do? There's a big disconnect between the young people and the retirement people. They don't want to pay more taxes, or the other part of that thought in their minds, if you talk to them, is like, well, I already had my kids. I sent them to school. Why do I need to support this? The real disconnect between school districts and the retirement community. What's ironic is nobody wants growth. Okay, I kind of get it. But I moved out here to get away from downtown Prescott. And I love downtown Prescott, but I just like the space, right? But they never complain about a good restaurant. They don't want the growth, but they want the nice new restaurant, whether it's your place here at El Charro. Essence is a great place. But you can't have those places without young people in workforce.
Right.
I'm not going to work for you. You're a great guy, but I get tired after 4 o'clock. I don't need another job. But I may come to work here just to get the jumbo margarita and do a trade. So, it's a conundrum, right? I respect that generation just above us. It's okay. We get a little background music. Okay. But how do we solve that? I don't want to get in that rabbit hole, but just as you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, it's challenging. And so when I see you working extra hard one night because you're down a person, whatever, which is happening to every restaurant in the area. It's not special to
It is. It's pervasive, and it's not just restaurants.
It's everywhere.
You've spoken to me about the same issue.
Yeah, same issue.
I think that, everything cycles.
Right.
And I think that at some point, I read an article by an economist in California think tank, and he said that this recession is going to be more of a white collar recession than it is a blue collar recession, because there just aren't enough people in the blue collar workforce to fit all the jobs. So even if things slow down a little bit here, it's an adjustable machine.
Right.
If I'm not as busy, I'm not buying as much food, and I don't need as much labor. So maybe at some point, we'll because right now we've been very busy. It's been good.
Busy, yeah.
And, maybe it'll slow down a little bit to where the demand meets the workforce. And then I can cultivate some good long-term employees like Bill Flores, like Javier Suarez, like Roberto Martinez, so that we can build this thing into the future.
Yeah. And that's, besides current workforce and residents, the immigration is another factor in that. If there's less immigration, we can't have great guys that want to make a difference in their lives and in our country. And you have employees who've been here 20, 50 years. That's like insanely, that's crazy. It's a testament to you, but it's also a testament to these people that want to come here. And, there's this, there's still stigma. Let's face it and be honest. But you hear about people like this and families like this, that these are people that just want to raise their kids and work hard.
Exactly.
And I think you're right to an extent, is that I jokingly say in the office sometimes, well, if I get canned tomorrow, I got a job doing something, because there's not enough plumbers and not enough window guys, or not enough cooks. There's white collar, definitely, maybe being an issue, but there's just tons of work out there. And we're upside down too, in a way. I'm hearing our population is older, and there's just simply less young people, and less young people having families, because ladies now have more opportunities and they're chasing their careers. Colleges are experiencing enrollment more of young ladies now and women than they are men, from what I'm hearing.
Right.
So that's an issue too that we're just trying to figure out. But you have so much history here, and really appreciate your time. If anybody wants to call for a reservation, what number would they call? I'll put you on the spot.
928-460-4869.
And I can tell you, if you don't live in Chino, it's worth the drive. I'm a regular here. The food is fantastic. The drinks are great. You can even ask Gary, the owner, about the history on the wall. We got history dating back to the 1500s, 16, 17, 1800s, ranching families. All this is passed up in terms of great ranch food, the grit to make it happen. I really appreciate your time. Can we come back and talk again?
You bet.
Dude, thanks a lot.
I thank you very much.
I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.